Hello, everyone. Welcome to the DMV Business Show. I'm your host, Otto Sevilla, and today our special guest is Angel Diaz. Angel is the president and CEO of Allegient Defense. Welcome to the show, Angel.
Thank you for having me.
Of course, the pleasure is all mine. So before we go into your history, if you can just give the audience a brief overview as far as what is Allegient Defense, please.
Sure. So we're a government contractor headquartered in Arlington, near Ballston. And we specialize in three things, right? We do the typical programmatic support services kind of work for the federal government. We do a lot of IT related work, right? And that encompasses everything from cybersecurity to help desk and many in between. And we do our traditional CETA support work, which is really engineering support work for the Department of Defense. So, you probably see online, right, a lot of the things associated with directed energy, hypersonic weapon systems, electromagnetic weapon systems, things of that nature. So we support the government, right? We help the government out in developing, right, managing the programs associated with the development of such technologies.
Wow, that sounds pretty cool.
It is. It's very cool.
Can't wait to get into how you came to all about in this industry.
Sure.
Are you originally from this area, the DMV area, Angel?
No. So, I've been here for quite some time. I'm originally from Miami, Florida, and I joined the Navy at 17. So I left Florida. I still go back, regularly, but I've been here now in Northern Virginia for quite some time. I was here as a Navy, military person, and then I left and came back, and I've been here now for, I would say, 14, 15 years now.
Okay. Wow. I'm actually heading to Miami in a couple of weeks later this month.
Excellent. Yeah, we love it out there. I go there. I live part-time here and part-time in Florida. So, I love the warmth. I love the culture. I love the food, right? My family members are there. And I think because of COVID, I really got the opportunity to essentially move back part-time. So my family and I are very excited about that.
I'm just thinking for tax purposes, it would be nice if you call that home and then this here up here part-time.
Sure. Yeah. So I do live there, more than 6 months out of the year. So for that purposes, it works out well.
Oh, fantastic. So you said at 17, you decide to join the Navy, right?
Well, I decided that a long time before that, right?
Oh, okay.
My father was in the military. I'm some second generation military. So ever since I was a little kid, right, I wanted to join the service. And when I was in high school, I was in a JROTC, right? And that kind of really solidified in my mind that I was going to serve my country. I just wasn't sure what branch. It wasn't until the Navy recruiter came about that he offered me, something I couldn't refuse. So I signed up as an information systems technician, and IT is what we call them today. And I joined at 17, turned 18 in boot camp. It was great.
Wow. Okay. So you said you're second generation. In Miami growing up, obviously you probably had serving in back of your mind, but what were you into? What did you like? You said you went into IT right when you entered the Navy. Were you always into tech or?
So, tech back then, this was in the late 90s. It's different than it is today, right? I remember my dad gave me his Tandy color computer in the early 90s, and I thought that was amazing, right? But from a networking perspective, from a computer perspective, it was really rudimentary compared to what we have today, right? But yeah, I was always into computers and things of that nature, graphics. It wasn't really until I joined the service that I really learned the real, networking and, some computer programming. We did a lot of communications, right? So other than computers, radio frequency communications, RF communications. So, I had an interest, certainly, but it wasn't until I joined that my interest just exploded, right? I essentially had great training, all the tools, right? The latest gear to really develop my talent, right? So yeah.
Okay, that's great. So how long were you in the Navy for?
Almost 9 years.
Okay. And you traveled the world, or were you mostly stationed in one base or a particular area?
So I would say half of my career I was stationed overseas. right, in Naples, in Italy, right,
Hmm.
which is a great place to be. As a result of that, that was my home station basically. But I did get to travel in different parts of Europe. Um, so I was there for almost for about 4 years. So definitely traveled a lot, right? Not just for work, but for pleasure as well. So it was a great, like I said, I turned 18 right around that time. So for me, it was a great way to kind of grow and mature and really go from like a young man to like, a man really, right?
Yeah.
It was great. Learned a lot, met a lot of great people, really dived into the Italian culture, which till today, right, it's really, I'm really fond of the culture. I go back to Italy as much as I can really. So it was a great part of my life that I just continue to develop upon over the years.
That's great. And during that 9 years in the Navy, were you always in IT there?
Yeah. So in the Navy, right, they call it's your rate. So my rate was the IT rate. However, within that rate, so many things, right? So many different specialties. In my case, I was very fortunate that I was stationed at what they call a master station, right? So essentially any form of communication, both IP-based communications or radio frequency communications like microwave, EHF, VHF, that kind of thing. You specialize there, right? Because you have to terminate the ships, you have to communicate with the ships, you have to ensure the ships communicate with other ships. So when you go there, you really learn the entire spectrum of communications, right? So I was there for 4 years in that station, and I just learned so much, right? Again, not just on the IT, the traditional IT kind of side of the house, but also the radio communications aspect of things.
Okay. So you say you were 9 years. So I guess around 27, 28, are you thinking, let me try something different, or what are you thinking then?
It was interesting. It was a crossroads for me, certainly, right? I love the Navy. I'm a very patriotic person. I love the military in general. So for me, it was my dream job, right? My dream come true. And I moved quickly. I got promoted quickly. I made rank quickly. During the time, it's somewhat more common today, but at the time, because I came in right out of high school, so I didn't have a degree. As a matter of fact, part of the reason why I joined was to really help, have the Navy help me go to school, right? So when I was in, for an enlisted person, very few, especially back then, really got to graduate, right? So at that time, I had my bachelor's of science degree in computer science. And I came back after September 11th, like a few days after September 11th, and I was stationed in DC. And, again, I was at the Naval Space Command, great place. I continued my education, right? And I came to the point where it was time for me to go again, to leave that station here it was actually in Dahlgren. And I requested, to extend another year so that I can finish my master's degree. And, the Navy needed me, right? They needed me in somewhere else. I think it was Japan, right? And although it would have been great, and I was really excited for that opportunity because I would have been in charge of the network operations center and the tech control, which is the more of the traditional wireless communications type of work is done there. I said to myself, I really want to continue pursuing my school, right? And I ended up getting out. It was very difficult for me because I really loved the Navy, right? But I loved school too, right? And I decided to get out, and I moved back to Florida and began rebuilding my career as a civilian engineer.
Oh, wow. Civilian engineer. Okay.
Yeah.
So you didn't think of going into IT, or you said, I know you majored in comp sci.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, so when I mean engineer, so it was IT engineering, right?
Oh, okay. I understand. Got it.
RF engineering, right? So
Okay.
so my first job out of the service was working at the Special Operations Command in Tampa, Florida, in MacDill Air Force Base as a civilian, right? So it was a great opportunity simply because I went from being a user of technology to being a developer of technology, right? But it was great because I had the subject matter expertise as to how these technologies are utilized in the field, right? I came from the field, right? So, I was able to make an impact, right, with the technologies that I was helping to develop for our warfighters, right? So, again, went to SOCOM, did a few years there, got promoted a couple of times. After about 3 or 4 years, I actually ended up back up here in Northern Virginia, and I've been here, since.
What made you move up here?
I always say this story, right? It's a great story. So, for the IT guys, you'll know what I'm talking about, right? So, every book you ever read has, any certification book, like your CCNA, any networking book, right? You always, in the first chapter, you'll learn about how DARPA invented the internet, right? So for us, especially back then, right, DARPA was this mythical organization that developed the internet. Very exciting, right? So one day, I'm sitting at home. I just got home and I got an email from a company in the area who's no longer around, actually, but they were a contractor for DARPA, and they wanted to bring me here to really leverage my subject matter expertise in wireless communications, right? When what a great opportunity, right? I got potentially get to go to the place that I've always read about in books, right? So that was in 2008. So in 2008, I moved back up here, and I was working for a company actually right near my headquarters down the road in Arlington, supporting DARPA. And that was really, it was a great opportunity because I wasn't just, really continuing to develop my technical acumen, right? My subject matter expertise in network and RF engineering. But I really got a taste of the business development side of the house a little bit, right? Which was a missing piece for me at the time. And so I was there for a few years before I decided to, kind of try this on my own. That's actually started the company on paper anyways in 2011, 10 rather. It wasn't until 2011 that I actually got my first subcontract, really doing, I really built the company around my own subject matter expertise, right? So I was doing some RF work for some intelligence and law enforcement agencies in the area. And that was, again, 2011 or so. And, we've been growing steadily since.
What made you choose, Angel, to go off on your own and sort of hang your shingle per se?
Well, I've always had the entrepreneur spirit, right? I think one of the things that, at least growing up in Miami, right, that you learn to grind from early on, right? You learn how to make money, you learn to grind. We have a lot of, us Latino folks, we have a lot of passion, right? So when we focus that passion in a certain area, it typically works out pretty well. If you're working on the right thing. And, I've always had it in me. I lacked the ability to verbalize and conceptualize around how to do it for quite some time because I didn't have mentors around me. They were business owners per se, right? So I kind of really learned along the way and gradually ended up saying, hey, if I can do this for a company, why can't I do it for myself, right? Mm-hmm. And it was, honestly, my wife, I had been married for a couple of years at that point. My daughter was just born. It was pretty scary. I'll never forget, I never forget the day that I submitted my resignation, right? The company was very, understandably very upset that I was leaving. And I never forget, they said to me, well, if you leave now, I was 2 months shy of the 2-year mark, right? And if you leave now, you're going to have to pay back all of the tuition assistance, all of the relocation. It was like $16,000, right? And I was 2 months shy, and I really had to make the decision, right? Is this $16,000? Is it worth me taking the risk, right? Knowing that now, I got to depend on my own acumen and energy really to keep it moving forward. And it was tough. As I said, my daughter was just born. Once you leave a company, you don't have medical insurance, right? Mm-hmm. So, I really had to think about it. But luckily, my wife, Marisol, she really supported me. Didn't think I was crazy, and I decided to take the jump with no insurance, a $16,000 debt, which at the time, I mean, it's a lot today, but at the time it might as well have been $1 million, right? But I did it, and I haven't looked back since.
Wow. So you're like, I don't even want to wait 2 months. I'll just pay the 16 grand if I need to get out. Yeah.
The opportunity came, right? And as you know, right. I mean, when the opportunity came, it wasn't, okay, I'm going to have my first prime contract. It doesn't work that way, right? Essentially, another company needed some subject matter expertise, and they were willing to give me my first subcontract. Those windows are very short, right? So I said to myself, I either decide this week, mm-hmm. or or I don't, and I continue in the environment that I'm in. I thought it was a great opportunity. I knew that if it depended on me, if I was in control of the situation, I was going to, obviously work as hard as I could, and I did. And again, it was very scary. And my mother-in-law, I'll never forget. I'll never forget this. Right, I had done all the math, right? How many months of savings I had in case I didn't get paid for quite some time, because as a standalone person, you'll invoice every 30 days, and then you'll get paid 30 days from that. So I needed at least 60 to 90 days of savings, right, to ensure that everything can stay kind of status quo in the household, and my wife wouldn't kill me. So my mother-in-law came through, and she lent me, no questions asked, just lent me $8,000, right? And I was so grateful to her, right? And I really didn't know when I was going to pay her back. I mean, I was new at this, right? I didn't know how to put an invoice together. And luckily, everything worked out, and I was able to pay her back within 30 days. And, I'll never forget her for that. She was the only one really at the time who took the risk on me. And, of course, my wife. But everything worked out. It was tough. There's many times that, we had to dip into those savings. But, over time, I think as an entrepreneur, as a business owner, you learn how to develop tolerance towards risk, right? I think tolerance towards risk is key, because the levels of stress that we deal with, right, are at exponential levels of what most people have to deal with, right? So it's really a gradual progression, really building up the tolerance for pain, the tolerance for risk. And that was really my first introduction to risk, right? It was very stressful at the time, but I think I learned a lot. And, I learned, more importantly, who around me really trusted me and believed in me, right? And who did not. So, it was very educational time of my life. I never forget my first employee. I'm sure we'll get that later on. I had the opportunity to hire my first employee, but I had to write a pricing proposal. I've never written a pricing proposal. It took me a week to figure out, I didn't have templates. I didn't have a mentor. I didn't have anything, right? Just really Google searching as much as I could to figure out how to develop a pricing. It was a technical volume, a small technical volume, and a small pricing volume, right? And I had no clue. It took me all weekend to put together maybe a two-page pricing volume. It's somewhat comical, right? Considering, where we're at today. But I really started from scratch, right? From my basement with no mentorship, guidance, just really perseverance and really an ambition to really build something great, right? But, I tell my folks that story all the time. It took me a week to put this pricing proposal together. And it was very basic, right? I didn't even know, 1920 hours, 1880 hours. I didn't know how to formulate a rate. It was a mess, but I learned, and I continued building upon that. And, sooner or later I had my own templates, right? When I started growing the company, the initial templates that we used were ones that I had created from scratch.
Yeah. Angel, when you started the company, you mentioned that first employee. How soon afterwards did you hire your first person?
I would say, let me think about that. So I technically started the company in 2010, but it wasn't on paper, right? On 2011, I got my first subcontract. I would say about a year after that.
Okay.
In 2012, that I hired my first employee. And he was a great guy. He was with us until last year, right? For about 9 years.
Okay.
And that was my first opportunity. And, again, opportunity comes, right? It's the ability to exploit it. I think everybody has opportunity, but folks don't exploit the opportunity sometimes, right? And in my case, I've always been one to exploit the opportunity. If I fail, but chances are I'll probably learn something from it. And that, again, was this chance. I didn't think about it, right? I have a company. It's just me. I don't have benefits. I don't have anything, right? So imagine taking the job. Yes, I'm hiring a new person without even knowing how to onboard a person, right? From an HR perspective, or being able to do payroll or timekeeping or anything like that. None of that existed. But I was able to put something rudimentary together that worked for about a year. And then after that year, as we kept on growing, right? My wife, Marisol, she did great. She started helping me out, right? And for her, it was a learning curve as well. At the time, she was working at the Census Bureau, doing some type of administration work. And she really, started working part-time, helping me with the company. After a few years, she just decided, it was too much work, right? She decided to come full time, and she has been managing, our HR and financial kind of back office since then, right? So it was really step by step, right? There was nothing given or any templates or any mentorship or any recommendation. I mean, it was just trial by fire, right? Which is really the best way if you want to learn and really build that tolerance that I mentioned earlier. It's really a family affair with us. I mean, we're completely, tied into this company, the brand, everything that we do, our teammates. And it's always been that way, right? As I mentioned earlier, right? When I left the previous company, I didn't have medical insurance. We just, actually, my wife was pregnant at the time, right? So we didn't have insurance for throughout the pregnancy. It was terrible. And, we went out there, try to get some support, some kind of medical, nothing, right? We had to pay, all out of pocket for that. And I said to myself, and I said to Marisol, one day when we start hiring employees, I'm going to make sure that everybody in the company has insurance, right? And to this day, we pay 100% of the medical, dental, vision, and all sorts of other things that we pay for 100% for the employee. And, it's been tough because, the medical insurance kind of system has been a mess for the last, 8 years or so. Very expensive for companies, right? You pay a lot of money, you don't get as much. And it gets more expensive every year, typically between 8 and 30%. If you let these providers do that to you, they'll clobber you with 30% increases, right? So you really got to be on your game there and negotiate, right? But the point is that although, insurance has gotten very expensive, that is a commitment that I've made, it's not just to myself and my family, but to the company, right? And to this day, thank God, we're still being able to do that for our teammates.
That's great. How did the business look, Angel, when you started, almost 11 plus years ago to how it looks today?
Very much like this picture right here. I was in my basement, and that's it. It was just me. I was working because I was billable for the first, I would say 7-8 years of the company. So I was, billable during the day, supporting my clients. Sure. And at night, I would do all the management, business development, proposal writing, whatever, right? Yeah. So it was just really me in my office, every day. I mean, the way I set it up, like I would, get into the office around 7, be out there by 4, drive home. And then I always made it a point to work until 10. That was my goal, to 10 every single day. And then on Saturdays and Sundays, I would, try to catch up with whatever I couldn't finish during the week. And I did that. I still do that, actually. but I did that religiously, right? Because that was the only way to really be able to, there's so much volume, so much work, right? It has to get done, right? Was to really commit yourself to doing it and putting a structure around your habits and your kind of work, right? That allows you to do that. And at the time I was working on my doctoral program as well, which I still am. It takes forever, but I'm almost done with that, thank God. But I really had to manage my time, right? Really, my family, right? Because I was in the military, and this is my second family, right? The first one, unfortunately, didn't work out, and most of the reason was because I wasn't there all the time, right? I was always doing something related to the military. So I made a commitment to myself that if I ever got married again, and I did, I was really going to prioritize my family. And I have, so, prioritize my family, my school, and of course the business, right? And of course my clients. So I had to find a very structured way to be able to do all that, right? And, it's just grinding it out, really. It's just, you got 24 hours a day, you got to sleep at least 6 or 7. So the rest of the time is really focused on knocking things out.
You mentioned before 7-8 years ago, you were still, working on the field billing hours.
Yes.
So you would come home from 4. Any family time there? I know you said you were going to family, or is it just straight to work till 10 o'clock at night?
No, remember, this is a family affair, right? So we could be sitting on the couch watching TV and working at the same time, right? Yeah. My Marisol is completely integrated into what I do every single day. And I'm integrated into what she does every day, right? So we always spend time together. We're at the office together. We're at home together. We do business meetings together. And, there's passive and there's active and passive work, right? Sure. The passive work is, it's like I'm, recruiting or kind of churning through some of the documentation that you have to look at, right? So those kinds of things, the passive work, I'll sit down, hang out with the family and I'll be on my laptop just kind of churning through some of this stuff. Yeah, today I got more help, right? I don't have to be there every day till 10, 11 o'clock at night because I got a great team. We built a great team, and I do have the help nowadays. But the point is that work always has to get done, and a lot of things are very time sensitive, right? And it's impossible to do it, in a normal work schedule, right? I mean, there isn't a business owner out there that works 8 hours a day, right? I mean, I can bet anything on, right? Business owners are working probably 7 days a week, not always active work, but they're working 7 days a week, and they work all day and all night, right? Now you're not at the desk all the time, right? You're not necessarily turning screws, right? But your brain is always working. You're always, I personally take notes, right? Like I get an idea, I'll take a note and I'll work on it the next day. If I can't, do it that day, but we're always working. You have to, right? It's very rare to see a successful business owner or a business owner that's achieved any kind of success who just works, 8 hours a day. And I've never seen it. I could be wrong. None of the crew, business owners around me that I engage with, regularly, they work as much or more than I do. So I haven't seen it, but it's possible. I just haven't seen it.
It's very true. I mean, even myself on the weekends, I'm always just thinking. And thank goodness we have our phones now, and I have a note, and then you just make a note like, okay,
that's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
And that's what I do is it's just never off.
That's right. Yeah. So the way I tell folks, right, it's there's actually a rhyme and reason behind it. There's high level, mid level, and low level thinking, right? So low level thinking, that's when you're focused on, very tactical work, right? You're writing a proposal, or you're doing something very specific, right? And then you have to find time for your high level and mid level thinking. And high level thinking is really when you're connecting all the dots, right? Disparate points, things that otherwise wouldn't connect unless you kind of think about it at a very high level, right? So you're doing one of the three, or you should be doing one of the three. If you're just doing, low level thinking as a business owner, you're going to be consumed. You're never going to be able to scale and grow the company, right? So you need all three, right? High level, you kind of figure out how to plan it, right? And then once you plan it, you begin executing. A lot of the low level thinking happens during the execution phase.
It sounds like even from the very beginning, Angel, you were very fortunate. You had plenty of work. Was that always the case just from the get-go, or was there any difficulties through the journey there or was there always work enough?
Yeah, I mean, there was lots of difficulties, right? I mean, there was always work for me, right? I was always very proactive in finding work and timing, if I knew my contract was coming to an end, to make sure I build a relationship with the client and my partner to ensure that work continued. But once you start growing, right, and it's not just you that you have to worry about, they have to worry about the work of, your teammates.
Mm-hmm.
There were times that, it happens today, right? We lose work all the time. We win all the time, but we lose all the time too. But when you're really small, right? When we were smaller, I never forget, there was one period that we lost like 2 or 3 contracts, small contracts, but basically, I had like 10 people in overhead.
Mm-hmm.
And I had built them to the point that they weren't just billing, but they were helping on the back office stuff, right? With proposals or whatever. And I couldn't allow myself to let the team disintegrate because it had taken me so many years to get to that point. We lost the work. I remember many, many times throughout my journey, I had to remortgage my house. I had to sell cars. I had to pull my 401k. If you want to succeed and really achieve great things, you're always going to be at the edge of success and failure. There is no comfort, right? There isn't, right? And, there are many times that, I believed in me and in the team, but a normal person who hasn't had this experience would have just fragmented, right? Think about it. You're emptying out your 401k. You're taking on second equity or an equity loan on your house. In this case, I had a couple cars that I sold too because they were paid off. I needed the cash just to keep my team going, right? And luckily, we were able to win some work and then get back on it, right? But it's always been this journey of struggle and really keeping it together in front of folks, right? The reality is, if you're in any kind of leadership position and you freak out every time something happens, well, the chances are your team is not going to have confidence in your ability to lead and move forward, right? So you have to really, even when you're really scared inside and really, afraid of something really bad, you can't think about that. You got to keep on moving forward. There's no option really isn't a failure, right? There's no safety net. You are the safety net, right? So there's no, you can't victimize yourself. You can't, you can cry a little bit if you want, but that's just going to help you feel better at the moment. The reality is you got to keep on moving forward. That's what a lot of folks don't understand about owning a business, right? It's the things that happen in between the wins, right? Or in between the losses sometimes too, that really define who you are, right? That's what most businesses don't last more than 3 or 4 years, right? Because they may have one good contract, but the reality is, if you haven't developed your legs under you, what's going to happen after that contract? Well, chances are, what mostly happens is you lose that work and then you go back to work for somebody else or join the government or something like that.
I'm glad you shared that story, Angel, about the cars and remortgaging the house and the 401k, because unfortunately, a lot of times now what we see in the media is just sort of the glamour of entrepreneurship. Yeah. But behind the scenes, there is much more to that besides the luxury or the cars or whatever it may be, the home. So I appreciate that.
No, let me tell you, man, I'm not one, I'm always one to encourage folks, right? But it's very important to, let me back up a little bit, the advent of social media. What do people put on social media? Even on LinkedIn, people don't put their losses on LinkedIn. They put their wins on LinkedIn, right? So it's very easy to assume, right, that it's just all, glory, right? The reality is those wins are far and few in between. In my case, we probably win 2 out of every 10 deals that we put in. And then recompetes, we probably win, maybe 8 out of every 10, right? But in between, there's a lot of losses, right? There's always some, it's highly complex, right? The reality is we work in an environment that we're not in complete control of the environment, right? So, for example, at least in government contracting, you can have the best product service, you can have the best price, you can have everything going for you, and you still lose the work. You'll lose the work because a lot of mysterious things happen, right? People beat you out sometimes and you don't understand why. They had a higher price or they underbid the contract. You're like, this is not sustainable, right? If you were to do a cost estimate analysis, right, a cost realism, if the government were to do a cost realism, you could quickly determine that the price that was bid is not sustainable. But if the government's not willing to go ahead and do that due diligence and understand why the price was what it was, it can easily award it to a competitor who underbid it. It happens all the time, right? So having the best product, having the best service, having a great price doesn't necessarily get you there. It probably gets you there half the time, to be honest, or actually less than half the time, right? So you have to be okay with losing a lot, right? You have to be okay with just having confidence and faith in your team's ability to keep on moving forward, because it's a very complicated, acquisitions are very complicated. And oftentimes the companies that win, they win for reasons other, right? Mm-hmm. Then they have a great product or a great price. So it's just a matter of continuing to move forward, knowing that if you do the right things, that, you're going to have some wins, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
What would you say drives and motivates you today?
I've always been a very motivated person, right? I don't know. I can't explain it, right? If you were to tell me to go clean your car right now, I'll be motivated to clean your car, and you'll have the best car, the car clean as best I could, right? I'm just very motivated to work with people. I'm very motivated to try new things. Obviously I like winning, right? I don't think there's a CEO that doesn't like winning, because if he or she doesn't like winning, it probably shouldn't be a CEO, right? We like to win. We like to build things. We like to work with people. We like to make an impact. We like to make a difference. We like to mentor. We like to share knowledge. And this job that I have, right, really allows me to do all that, right? It really is the best job in the world, because I get to do, what some people dream of, right? No, it's tough. All right. It's a grind, right? It's a lot more losses than wins, but I know that I'm making an impact every day with my teammates, their families, right? What we do has a direct impact on the families, our clients, right? and it's being able to support the incredible missions that they support. So it's just a great thing, great opportunity to have. It's a great opportunity to have.
You mentioned your team several times, and I know you started 11 years ago with that one employee. How does your team look like today? And how do you go about hiring that right person to put in the right seat in the bus?
Let me tell you, everybody talks a big game. Everybody talks a big game around here, right? And we're surrounded by folks, right, who, let me back up a little bit. It takes a long time to build the right team. It doesn't just happen, right? First, you have to learn what the right team is supposed to look like. I think as business folks, right, especially when you're first starting, right, you don't really know what desirable qualities you want in somebody. You don't know, right? You tend to see things like how, from your own point of view, and you lack the ability to verbalize or even conceptualize around what a good teammate would be. So, I would say if after about 7 or 8 years, after being burned multiple times, right, I've lost family members, I've lost friends, right? I've lost everyone around me. Only then did I start to realize or be able to verbalize what those qualities are in a person that I want to work with and call my teammate. And once you kind of figure it out, right, it's still kind of hit or miss, right? But you hire one person who's really great, or typically you hire one person who's really bad, and you understand what you don't want, right? Which then will help you find the person that you do need, right? So when you finally get that person on board, and you begin to normalize around that relationship, and you get to understand them, and they get to understand you, and we as a team get to understand what the company needs, right? Then together we will find other teammates. These are people who you want to work with. The reality is we spend more time with our teammates than we do with our family members sometimes, right? It is not just about the work, right? It's about the teamwork. It's about the culture, right? Especially the front office, right? I mean, my front office team now, we work 7 days a week. It's like a very tight community, right? We it's not just about work all the time. You learn a lot about a person, having dinner, having a team building event, right? That's going to kind of let you know who you have around you. And then once you understand who you have around you, then you can trust that person, right? Or you can decide if you want to trust that person and vice versa, because the team has to trust you as well. So it took a long time. As I said, I got burned a lot, by, again, family members, friends, right? But it's part of the journey. It's supposed to be hard. It's not easy. It's never going to be easy. It's supposed to be hard. It's supposed to be very painful. You're going to learn a lot about yourself during this journey, right? And I think ultimately, as you learn and grow and become a better person, right? Better entrepreneur, better business person, better leader, better follower, ultimately, right, you'll begin driving your bus, is what I call it, right, towards success. Because you can't achieve success alone. I think those days are behind us, right? The days of the Lone Ranger going out there and just kind of conquering, those days are behind us, right? Our environment is highly complex, and one person can't know it all or do it all. The reality is you need to build a high trust environment and have a great team that lives within that environment, and everybody kind of does what they're supposed to do, right? Can't second guess them. You got to trust their judgment, even if you don't always agree with them, right? You gotta let people fail. And that's one of the toughest things as an entrepreneur, right? Is letting people fail. We have I think most of us early on probably don't want to let somebody fail because it's going to hurt us. And then you realize, let them fail. It's going to hurt us a little bit, but in the long run, it's going to be better for all of us, right? So again, it goes back to that tolerance for pain, right? How much pain are you willing to endure in order to build a team that is necessary to get you to that next level, the next 3 levels, right?
Is most of your team, Angel, here at headquarters in Virginia, or are they in Florida or remote, or how does that look?
Okay, because of COVID. So before we were in the office, every single day. Since COVID, we've adopted a hybrid approach, sure, right? So we probably go into the office. I probably go in 2 or 3 days a week, and then the team does something like that. My COO, great guy. He's there 5 days a week, right? He works better at the office. So it really depends on what's good for you, right? It's not even a topic of conversation anymore, right? People just do what it's best. And for us, it's about execution, right? As long as those things get done, we're good, right? Now, I do like seeing my teammates. I think they like seeing me. They say they like seeing me. So we, after a few days, I'm like, okay, I got to get back into the office. I want to engage with my team. We want to have a cup of coffee. We want to hang out, right? We want to chat, want to talk, want to conceptualize and explore, right? So it's necessary to be at the office. We just don't do it 5 days a week now.
Okay, I see.
A lot of the high level thinking as a team, for example, really comes about from being in each other's company, right? Typically, for example, when I'm home, I'm very tactical, right? I'm doing specific things, right? When I'm at the office, it's a lot of the high level, mid-level thinking, right? With my team, conceptualization, exploration, right? Thinking outside the box, that kind of thing. But all three are necessary. Personally, I find that the tactical work, I'm better at it when I'm here at the house, because I can just turn my headset on and just start grinding away. But a lot of the high level things, the relationship building, for example, the conceptualization of complex topics, really that works well when we're at the office. Now, we do have this kind of setup as well. So we do virtual meetings regularly, right? We adopt a lot of agile best practices. So we do scrums every day. I do like one a week with my team, the execs, and all the execs do one every single day with their teams, right? So, everybody does slightly different. We're not, ride or die agile, but a lot of those best practices we definitely use, right? And kind of adopt them as we see fit or work better for us. So communication is key. Over communication is key in the company, that's for sure.
Angel, you have such a rich business career thus far, and I know you still have a long way to go, but what is it that you're most proud of thus far?
I'm not, statistically, Cuban American kid from Miami, growing up in an impoverished environment, I'm not supposed to be here, right? Statistically, I'm not supposed to be here. So, I'm glad that I'm here. I'm glad that I had the opportunity to really actualize or continue to actualize the best version of myself, right? Like I said, we don't always get this opportunity coming from the background that I come from, right? So to be able to do it really serves as inspiration for other kids growing up who may have grown up like me, right? Who think that maybe, there's nothing for them out there, right? And the answer is yes, there is. The reality is there's no, and at least not in this country, right? There's nobody holding you down, right? If somebody does, you can just go somewhere else, right? It's really that easy, right? I tell folks, the oppressor only exists because the oppressed allow them to, right? So if you're in an environment where you feel like you cannot achieve or actualize the best version of yourself, there's nothing stopping you from going to a different environment. Is it going to make you feel uncomfortable? Yeah. It's going to be tough, probably. But can you do it? Yeah, sure. Of course you can. I mean, I'm a perfect example of that, right? And I brought people with me as well, right? So, just to be here, to be, have this conversation with you, to have such a wonderful company and do, be able to do the great things that we do for our clients, just makes me, very, very happy, right? And I reflect on it all the time because you can never forget where you came from, right? And I always try to find ways to engage with kids, just like me, right? Who maybe don't have mentorship around them or any guidance, or maybe there's nobody in their environment doing what they want to do, right? So they can't really verbalize what it is they want because there's nobody there that can really look towards and see how it's done, right? There's a reason I started from scratch, because there was nobody around me doing what I was doing, right? But it doesn't have to be that way. If you work for the right company, if you have the right mentors, either passive or active, right, you're going to be able to save years. It'll save years because you'll learn in a day, in a week, in a month, what could potentially take you years, or 5 years, 10 years, right? So the idea is always to have an open mind, always to seek mentorship, even if it's passive mentorship. And what I mean by that is a lot of my mentors never knew they were my mentors. I just picked somebody out and I kind of like what they were doing. I try to emulate them, right? I've always done that. I did it in boot camp. I did that when I first got to my first duty station. And I do that today. I have a lot of great friends around me. Not a lot, but I have a few friends around me. And I aspire to be like them. So I really observe what they do. I ask for guidance. They give me recommendations, and then I try to fit those recommendations on what I do. It's really that easy, right? But does it take time? Yes, right? Folks think that you can do things overnight, right? Nothing happens overnight. You got to put in the time. The game, you can't cheat. I tell folks, you cannot cheat the game. The game knows. The game knows, right? Even if I were to give you success today, if I were to make, not you, but in general, if I were to make a person a CEO today, if you haven't had the journey, if you haven't learned along the way, you'll lose it the next day. You can't retain it, right? So the whole point is really to have a wonderful journey, one of enlightenment, right? One of knowledge, right? And really, use that journey, learn along the way to be able to achieve and retain over time.
It's so true, Angel. And I think just some individuals may not want it. I agree. Growing up in the neighborhood, for me, just me personally, the majority of people didn't even go to college. And
that's right.
And maybe we weren't exposed to certain role models in the neighborhood, but I just went to books, and that sort of opened up my view. And I would see other neighbors, and I'm like, and they're still going. I don't want to say they're going nowhere, but to each their own. But we're in America, thank goodness. We're in this wonderful land, this country. You have the opportunity if you want it.
Yeah. So the thing is this, I've thought about this a lot. I've written papers on this. I studied this from an academic perspective, right? Folks don't always realize that they're submerged in an environment, right? It's only until you break the water level, right? That state of being submerged, that you realize what's around you, right? So a lot of, like, to your point, I go back home sometimes, and a lot of my old friends are still doing the same thing, right? Not really growing in any way, right? But they don't realize that there's more for them to do, and they have all the potential in the world to do it. They just don't realize that yet, right? And it's very unfortunate. I'm the kind of guy, I share knowledge, right? So when I go back home, I'm the guy that calls everyone, I invite them over, I'll cook dinner for them just to learn about them and kind of understand their story, see if I can provide help in any way, right? And I make it a point to always do that. It could be everything from starting, a car wash business to whatever it is that they want to do, right? I try to have them think about these things and then try to put a plan together to help them get to the next level. And some of the folks do it, some don't. And it's hard, don't get me wrong. It's easier to kind of hang out at home and watch TV and eat Fritos or Cheetos or whatever it is, right? It's hard. It's comfortable, and people get complacent. But not everybody does. There's a lot of folks who do want to go above and beyond. They just lack the language. They lack the ability to verbalize how that looks. So if I can help them verbalize that, if I can help them see a different life, right? Then I'm doing my job, right? I'm paying it back. It's all about paying it back.
It's true. Are there any specific habits or skills that you feel that helped you, whether personally or in business?
Well, perseverance, right? I always say this because it's true. I get punched in the face every day. I've been getting punched in the face, figuratively and physically, right? For a long time, right? I always get back up, right? You can punch me hard, you may knock my teeth out. I'm always going to get back up. Wipe my face and keep on going. That perseverance, I think, is what has helped me. Not just when I was a kid in school, getting beat up every day, right? But when I got into the Navy, right, in the military, I would get, in the military, it was a little different back then than it is today, right? I was second generation military, but as of today, my two sons are in the military. One of my brothers is in the military, the other one's still in the military. So this is a multi-generational kind of family thing, right? So I can kind of see, I hear my dad's stories when he was in the Marine Corps. I have my own personal story. Then I kind of see, through my cousins in the military, my kids are in the military, my brothers. So, I've seen the changes over time, right? And the military, when I was in, was very different than it is today. As I'm sure when my dad was in, it was very different than when I was in. But the whole point is that perseverance, right? Is really what has helped me, because sometimes things look pretty gloomy, right? And it's very easy to kind of feel bad for yourself or throw the towel in. What you don't know is that success is right around the corner, or you just need a little more effort, right? I tell people the difference between those that succeed and those that don't is 10%, right? You just don't know it sometimes because you don't always know where you stand in that chain of events leading up to success, right? Things could be really bad and all of a sudden they get better, right? So perseverance, I would say, is probably my forte.
Okay. What would you say is the biggest challenge with your role at Allegient Defense today?
Well, I mean, the challenges are inherent in what I do, right? So it's not any different than any of my colleagues in the industry. You know, we're challenged in an environment that's very unstable, right? Now, we do have stability in contracts once you win them, but there's a lot of laws and regulations. Things are constantly changing, right? It's not set and forget. So we're always reacting, right, to things in the environment that are changing that we have no control over, right? But if you want to move forward in that environment, you have to change, adapt, and keep on moving forward. So, you know, it's an ever-changing environment, right? I think, you know, as of recently, you know, COVID has had certain effects, both positive and negative, I think, in our society, right? So, you know, we're trying to figure, we've done well, right? We've kind of figured that out, pivoted a little bit and you know, changed accordingly. So, you know, the thing is, it's an ever-changing environment. A lot of competition, right? And if, you know, I mean, I would say that's the biggest challenge.
Has
Competition.
has COVID affected business at all, Angel?
Well, you know, from an operational perspective, you know, we have our entire team working at home.
Mm-hmm.
That presents its own challenges right there. From a recruiting perspective, right? You know, the Great Resignation is real, right? So very challenged from a recruiting perspective. Everybody is, right? Also, our clients are at home most of the time, so we can't engage with them like we would like to. You know, doing business is a very reciprocal kind of thing, right? You need to engage with your teammates and your clients and communicate. And unfortunately, due to COVID, a lot of that communication has, at least with our clients, has somewhat broken down, right? It's very tactical right now. It's not, you know, mid-level and high-level thinking, or you can't really sit there and conceptualize how to make a program better because they're just focused on just, you know, keeping things afloat. So from that perspective, it's been a little challenging. Yeah, I would say, you know, recruiting, team, you know, employee management, right? And of course, a lot of, you know, in our industry, we have a pipeline. These are all the opportunities that we're going to go after in the next, you know, X amount of years. Well, that opportunity reflects a number, right? Hundreds of millions of dollars potentially. And then there's a percentage, a percentage win ratio associated with that number. So if you have, you know, let's say your pipeline is, you know, I don't know, a few $100 million, knowing that you have to capture at least 10 or 20% of that in order to stay afloat or keep things moving, and all that work now moves to the right, well, it basically cannibalizes your pipeline. So from a business perspective, you got to find a way to, you know, fill those gaps. So it's very challenging, right? Luckily, I got a great team, that, you know, with me that helps to focus on that. But it's very challenging because we have bills to pay, right? You have families to pay. We have insurance payments to make, right? You can't just, you know, there's never a steady state. You're either moving forward or you're drowning. So just keep on moving forward, right? You're never at a standstill. The minute you're at a standstill, you begin to sink. It's like quicksand, right? So you got to feed the monster. It's just constant, right? There is no break from that, really.
Yeah. What do you know now that you wish you would have known at the start of your business career?
Oof, that's an interesting one. Give me Man, you know, I've learned so much, right? You know, one of the things. So you have to understand, right? You know, when I was in high school, I was in JROTC. So, you know, the kind of leadership that you learn, right? It's somewhat authoritarian, right? When you're in the military, that's at least back then, maybe not today, but back then, in a position of leadership as a senior enlisted person, right? The leadership approach that was mostly used was somewhat authoritarian, right? So of course, when I became a civilian, that's what I used. That's the only leadership style that I had in my tool bag, right? So that doesn't work anymore, right? At least not solely by itself, right? So, you know, it took me many years to develop new leadership styles, right? Or adopt new leadership styles. You know, I prefer a more collaborative leadership style personally, right? I tell folks it's the ability to give and receive lateral influence. So for example, right, at some point in the journey, I may be in charge, but I can hand off my work product to the most junior person on the team and they're in charge. And I, as a senior person, have to receive lateral influence from that person. You got to be okay with that, And that's my approach. It's really servant leadership and collaborative leadership, right? Giving and receiving lateral influence. It took many years to understand or to verbalize that, understand that, and implement it in practice, right? So I wish I had all this knowledge and experience when I started. Frankly speaking, now that I look back, I wish I had this knowledge and experience, when I was in the military, right? Because I think it could have been very useful. But it doesn't. That's the way it is. It's a reason why it's called the journey. You're supposed to learn along the way and become a better person, right? Better at business, better as a person, personally. So that's one of the things, right? I think the way you engage people is key to the success of any business, right? And the engagement has to be authentic. It has to be real. It has to be truthful, right? And you have to be committed to yourself and to your team. And I think if you have all those ingredients kind of working together, I think there's a high likelihood that you'll be positioning yourself and the team for success.
With that change in leadership style through the years, was that just you yourself, or was it reading books or any coaching, or?
A combination, right? So I've always been a very hands-on person, right? So, as a practitioner, I went to school for techie stuff, right? Especially my bachelor's and my master's. So it's very tactical education, right? When you do a PhD or any kind of doctoral program, it's a little different. That's not as tactical, right? It's more high level, right? So as a practitioner, oftentimes we're always trying to figure out, we're seeing the symptoms. We're not seeing the actual root causes, right? So our tool bag as a practitioner is very limited in how you identify and resolve problems. It really wasn't until I began my Doctor of Education program at GW. There's a big, to a human learning factor to that, right? That I began understanding, right, how humans learn, how they interact with one another, that kind of thing, right? How to see things in the environment that most folks won't see, right? Like I remember I go into organizations, right, and it's like the Matrix. I can see what the issues actually are, right? And typically they're different than the symptoms of the problem, right? So, again, a lot of it, I kind of learned from an academic perspective, and then I was able to interpret and implement in practice, right? How do I take this theory of learning, this theory of leadership, what have you, and find a way to operationalize that theory in practice? And it's kind of an area that I kind of sit in the middle, right? I take the academic piece and I implement in practice, and then I measure. Right. And it's been a great way to kind of take our game as a company to the next level. And also a great way for me to, get better at engaging and communicating and at the end of the day, getting people to work together to accomplish a common goal, or at least to have some kind of common identity or culture, right? Culture is big in my company, right? We focus on it every single day. We measure it. We enforce it, right? We maintain it, right? And I think all of that was really a result of my academic experience.
Okay. Coming to an end here now, Angel, what does the future look like for you in Allegient Defense the next 5 years or so?
That's a great question. I can see you haven't been keeping up with my LinkedIn, because if you would have known. So okay, it's about scaling, right? As a small business, there's only so many resources you have. So, you either buy or get bought, right? So you can, achieve a higher level of scale. So, and this is public knowledge now. The partner company and now Vertical, they're interested in acquiring us as a standalone company. So the reality is, over the next few years, we're going to be scaling at a different, more exponential level, right? With the support of a larger parent company. So I'll still be here, but the idea is that I'll have more support to be able to grow the company in ways which unfortunately I couldn't before, right? So for the next 5 years, our hope is to really grow from a small company to perhaps a mid-sized company.
That's great to hear. But the name and everything's still staying the same, right?
Correct. So we'll be a standalone subsidiary for Allegient Defense. So from a structure perspective, our company would be the platform company for federal government contracting.
Okay. Congrats.
Thank you. Thank you. I tell folks, right, it's just another level in the game, right? Folks, when they hear, oh, you can go retire now, it's like, no. It doesn't work that way. It's kind of, when we played Mario Brothers when we were kids, right? You kind of go to every level and you kill the boss. Well, it's just a different level, a different boss, right? The reality is our business environment is moving at such a rapid pace, right? The traditional methods to growing a company, especially a small business, are almost no longer viable, right? You really need to work with, you need more resources, you need more expertise, you need your own legal team. A lot of times we spend our time just in legal, working with the lawyers to be able to figure something out, right? So, in this case, if we can externalize some of those things to the higher level parent company, so we can then focus on, increasing the size of our pipeline, getting better at, increasing our P-win, right? Our percentage win ratio by just being more precise, doing, writing better proposals, engaging with clients, that kind of thing. At least that's my vision, right? Be able to externalize some of these things that keep us busy all the time, so we can then focus on less things, but become better at those things, right?
When you're not busy working, Angel, what do you like to do for fun in your free time?
So I do have hobbies. I think they're necessary, right? You can't just be working all the time. So in addition, obviously, to spending time with my family, I love, I work out a lot, right? I think, if it wasn't important before COVID, I think it's even more important today, right? Because, the vaccine is only one layer of protection, right? I think having a strong immune system is another layer of protection. So, I spend a lot of time on the Peloton. Marisol does too. I have a whole Peloton team. It's really innocent fun, right? We just joshing each other, right? Trying to be very competitive on the Peloton. I typically do that daily. So I like working out. And I like motorsports, right? So I love Formula One. I love going on the track, right? And then, of course, enjoying, good food and good wine with my friends and family. That's basically all I do nowadays in addition to work. I, eat good food. I drink good wine. I hang out with friends and family, right? I think one of the things that COVID did teach me was that, we need to spend more time with each other, right? Quality time anyways. So, I have a small circle of friends and family, and I really put a lot of effort in maintaining those relationships, right? And building those relationships. And then I like going to the track from time to time. That's about it, really. And the beach, of course, I live in Florida part-time, so, I'm a beach bum, right? So I'll be happy at the beach, right? All I need is a towel and an umbrella, maybe not even that. And you won't hear a complaint out of me, to be honest.
Okay. That's great. Where can people find out more information, Angel, about you and Allegient Defense?
Sure. So we have a website. It's allegiantdefense.com. We're very active on LinkedIn, right? So my personal profile, and then of course the company has a profile as well on LinkedIn. We're extremely active on LinkedIn, right? It's a primary marketing mechanism, right? So any latest things, any awards, recognize everything from recognizing our folks to winning new work to supporting the veteran community, which is something I'm very passionate about. You can see all that on LinkedIn. You shoot me a message, I'll reply. I'm on there constantly, right? Not just from a personal branding perspective, but again, from a corporate kind of branding perspective as well.
Angel, thank you so much for coming on the show. I had a great time.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you. Take care.
Take care, sir.